Happy Election Day. Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Robert Owens into the Wolff Den. How are you doing?
Good to see you.
Been an eventful day for everybody. We actually met at Mark Moyer's clubroom events. Great chat that you had and some good conversation. But for the people who weren't there and who don't know who you are, give a brief intro, and then we'll get into all of it.
Well, gosh, hi to all of you that are listening, wherever you are. Let me see. My background is a little interesting. I'm known for a couple of things. One is I got classified as the fittest and mentally toughest 66-year-old in the world by Spartan Games a few years ago, which wasn't true, but I appreciated Joe DeSena, the founder of Spartan Games, saying it.
Who do you think is? I mean, if you had to say, who would you, if someone said you have to designate someone for that, and not in age, but like just in general?
Oh gosh, I don't know. You know, it's funny because endurance encompasses a whole lot of different things. Like, is it aerobic or anaerobic? You know, is it you get your heart up and jack it up like CrossFit Games over and over and over, or is it endurance where you just keep a steady heart, you just go for days and days? So there's all kinds of stuff. I think, everybody looks at Goggins, and he obviously is a specimen. There's just different guys. What I do is I go over to the senior channel on YouTube, and I check out the guys there, and it just makes me smile and laugh. Like, some of your listeners may have never done that, but you go over to YouTube and you go senior athletics or senior running, and there's two guys called Thunder and Lightning, and they're both over 100. And they race in a 60-yard dash, they shake hands beforehand, and you see them waddling down the place. The place is going nuts with people screaming for them, And I just go, God, they're having so much fun. They're laughing. And there's all kinds of seniors or non-senior endurance folks. I just like challenging myself to see, as Goggins would say, what if, I wonder what if I could really do something like this. And the what if usually is a little captivating. That's why, as you know, I'll be on a team rowing a boat across the Atlantic coming up here in 2 weeks. And so we'll be going 3,500 miles at about 2 miles an hour. And we'll be out there for 40 or 50 days, depending if we go backwards for 5 or 6 days during one of the storms. But it's 3 hours on, 3 hours off. You row, looking at some people here, I don't want to hit them. You get in this boat. There's 12 of us. There's, if you know collegiate crew, there's 3 ports on our thing. 3 guys rowing on the left and 3 guys rowing on the right. And so you row an hour and a half on the left, and you switch over, get an hour and a half on the right, starboard, and then you're done for 3 hours. And you do that 3 on, 3 off for the 40 or 50 days. And so I've done a lot of different kind of endurance things, and I do a lot of teaching on mental resilience, mental toughness, mindfulness. And I thought this would be a great place to challenge myself to see what it's like to go 3 days or 3 hours on, 3 hours off for 40, 50 days. And it's not really sleep deprivation, but
Yep, I think we got to pause here.
Ready for the next 3 hours. So it's pretty fun. And people told me I was too old at 71 to do it. And I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to prove them wrong again. So
yeah, that's a theme that you've probably had throughout your whole life. And I'll say, in the conversation that I had with you and the conversation that you had at Mark Moyer's Win Again event, you are extremely modest when you talk about what you've accomplished. It's okay, and we're going to talk about all of it. It's a 1%. There's 1% of people in the world who've done a lot of the different things that you've done. We'll talk about that. It's okay. They're going to hear what you've done, what you're looking to do, and let everyone decide, about that. But that's just my feeling as what I've heard.
Well, you're a nice man, and I'm going to go sit down in my living room. I just got done with my hour run, so I got to get these clothes in the house, and then we'll sit down and we'll talk a little bit. For me, it's always been a challenge that I was a disabled kid. You know, when I grew up, I was adopted, and I was adopted with bad feet. I didn't learn to run until I was in 6th grade. And so I always thought it would be good to see, you know, later on if I could ever do anything. And so I had snakes in my head, you know, like you're worthless, you can't do anything. And so my mom threw me in a pool, and I found that I liked the water. And from there, just began to have men. And probably the thing I want to say the most is I am so grateful for the different men, coaches, who began to invest themselves helping this kid who had issues. And they said, you know, you have a lot more potential in you than you know. And the only problem with you is you're lazy and you're undisciplined. And, you know, you can't really, I can't do much with a parked car. You got to roll a little bit to get us going. So why don't you get your act together and put out and deal with your stuff? And so it started in high school. And those coaches sort of fathered a whole bunch of us. And then some guys spent some time with me and said, hey, listen, you have special ops in you. And I said, no, I don't. And they said, yeah, you do. And so they said, you have special ops pararescue. Would you like to be a pararescueman? And I said, I don't have faith in me, but I have faith in your faith in me. And so I did what they said. And as I said, I went dark.
That's important. Right. I mean, to have when people have faith in you, and it's faith, it's confidence. But when you have people like that you trust,
Right.
you attempt, and you can't do until you attempt. Right.
Correct. Yeah, it's important. And so, like, what message do I want to give the listeners? Believe in somebody. Believe in somebody who may not look like they should be believed in. The power of one person being positive when all the negativity is around. There's books written on the miracles that happen when one person believes when nobody else does. And so I look at kids today when I go into high schools and speak, and go out to universities and speak, or I work with young staffing issues or something. And I look at kids, you know, or I look a barista in Starbucks, and I just know that there's so much talent and so much ability, but maybe no one has really believed in them the way that they needed to be believed in. And therefore they caved in or quit or stopped, gave up. And I found that, you know, I just got back in April. I spoke to 5,000 high school kids in South Africa. And they would just line up to want to talk afterwards. Just, can I tell you my situation? My dad's a drunk, or, you know, my abandoned by my third father, or, you know, I blah, blah, blah. All these issues. They look so nice, and yet inside there's just so many problems and so much snakes in their heads. And I remember my elementary school years, my junior high years. I mean, I started drinking hard at 7th grade. I got sexually abused twice, 7th and 8th grade. My mom was dying of lupus, and it was just a tough time. And so fortunately, teachers came and said, you know, you're a good kid. You're screwed up, but you're a good kid. My 7th grade counselor cried with me in his office, you know, just cried with me and said, you're a good kid. You're going to make it. And I just said, am I? And he said, yeah, you're going to make it. And I remember his name today. His name was Smokeoff. And I don't remember any of my teachers per se of those years, but I remember the guy that cried with me when they were trying to kick me out of school for the umpteenth time for being a kid acting out his pain and getting in trouble all the time. So,
and people might not even have known it. Like, you can't fault people for acting a certain way with the background, but what you can do is guide them and give them the support and the belief that that's not going to define who they are.
you bet. And it may be that you believe a long time for them, meaning they may not get it together right away,
Yeah.
but they remember the person who believed in them, and they come back.
Oh, we lost volume here for a second. I don't know if you can hear me.
They come back to you and say, hey, will you still believe in me 3 years later or 4 years later? And so the power of positivity, of believing, is just huge. And that's said as a grandfather. It's said as a father of 5. It's said as a guy who coaches now. I coach special ops military wannabes, Rangers, SEALs, Pararescue, Recon Raiders. You know, I look at these young guys or ladies, and they look at me like, do you think I'll make it? And I say, I think you can. You can, but you need to train different. You just didn't do this right, or you can get better at this. I looked at a guy this morning. I was in the gym and I was watching the election stuff and whatever else I was, ESPN stuff. Anyway, this guy about 70 collapses, and he collapses. He's white. He's not breathing. I mean, he's like 3 treadmills over from me. And all these people run and jump. So this paramedic gets over there, and then this other guy, and I go over there, and I get on my one knee, and I look at this guy, and I start talking to him, and he's just white as a sheet. Thought he had a heart attack. Anyway, this other paramedic came in. I said, I'm an old paramedic. You're a young paramedic. You have him, And then I said to him, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I'm a firefighter. I said, great. How's it going? It's all right. I said, just all right? He goes, yeah, it's all right. I said, have you ever thought about being a pararescueman? A combat paramedic. He said, you were a PJ? I said, yeah, I was a PJ. I said, you could do it too. He looked at me and said, I don't know. And you could see that thing where I'm a fireman and I like it. But I'm treading water. I believe there's so much more in my life. This is a good paying job. And I look at him, I say, you can do this. You could do that dream. If you want to be a PJ, he said, yeah, I'd really like to be a PJ. I said, you could do that. He just looked at me like, who is this guy? Just all of a sudden in his world, I said, I'll help you. What's your weak part? He said, swimming. I said, I can help you get that together. And I can help you get your underwater phobias. I can help you where Goggins quit Pararescue, when he went in his book, I can teach you how to do that if you want to learn how to do that. And he just looked at me like, no one ever talks like this to me. No one ever just believes in me like this. And I just said to him, here's my number. If you want to get in that dream, and being a fireman is a great thing, but if you have bigger dreams, you can do this and I'll help you. And he just looked at me, thanks. And he just walked away. And I went, it didn't take much to encourage someone. It didn't take much to get in their space, and say, I believe in you. And even though I didn't know him, you could say he was a quality guy, just was thinking small, didn't know how to think big. Had another.
Do you think he'll call?
Is that my call?
No, do you think he'll call?
Oh, I hope he does. Yeah.
Do you look at anyone and say, I don't know if this is for you?
Sometimes, but sometimes it's a real, I don't know if this is for you, or it's, I think I could, but I don't know, blah, blah, blah. There's all these levels, of how they engage mentally. But I've done it for other kids and they've made it, they've become SEALs or Army Rangers or pararescue guys. And they look back, I just go, wow, I just didn't know. And I said, we all say that. We all didn't know till some guys took us under their wings and said, you can do this kind of stuff. So
you say anyone to do that? Or there has to be some, there's physical, there's mental, there has to be some baseline to grow into what that, because that is those are true 1%ers, right? SEALs and yeah.
Well, we teach this. I work for SEALFIT. SEALFIT is a CrossFit gym that was designed to train Navy SEAL candidates. And it was a Navy contract. Would you please take this CrossFit and get these kids ready to come in, because we have too many kids quitting once they get in. They don't know the severity of what's going to happen, so they get overwhelmed when they come in. So this CrossFit, US CrossFit, became SEALFIT, and we run crucibles 3 times a year, 6-hour nonstop, 12-hour nonstop, 24-hour nonstop, 50-hour nonstop. And we say to these young people, there's 20 times more potential in you than you've ever had someone bring out of you. And why don't you let someone bring it out of you? Because it's pain. You don't want the pain of change, the mental pain, the emotional pain, the physical pain, the financial pain, the social pain. You don't understand that when you want to do that level of a high goal, like an NFL guy or Olympian, you're going to have to say no to a whole bunch of things to say yes to one thing. And I don't know if you want it that bad.
I watch Men in Black, and at the end he asks them, is it worth it? Do most people end up thinking that, yes, this was definitely worth it?
Yeah. And especially if they don't make it, we look them in the eye and say, you still can do this, this, but you have to train differently. You're just going to have to get better at this and that. Do you want to put in the time? If it takes 10,000 hours to be a concert violinist, or, whatever it is, 10,000 hours produces, it's the same thing here. Are you willing to put in the time, get the coaching, go through the pain of change, of growth, of stress, of not wanting to get out of bed in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, all the stuff that comes with it. You have more potential, and do you want to cultivate that? Is it worth it to you? And when we have young people, it's really funny. I get to do autopsies on these guys. Someone, when they quit, I put them in the med tent, and say, okay, you just quit. And let me ask you this. If I gave you $1 million, could you go back out there and keep going? They go, oh, yeah. And I say, really? They said, yeah, for $1 million, you bet. And I say, how about 500,000? Yeah, you bet. How about 20,000? They look at you a bit longer like, yeah, I could probably do it for 20. I said, could you do it for 500? They go, no. I said, because it's not a matter of you having capability, it's your head.
Yeah.
Your head doesn't want it that bad. You got to want it. When I trained for Pararescue, I said, I would rather die than quit. And the guys who trained me said, you've got to have that. You have to pass out underwater, drown yourself, whatever it takes. You will not quit and give up.
Because it's also the regimen or training or it's meant to weed out people.
The mind quits before the body does.
Yeah. I want to there's so much that you've done. I want to get into all that, but this thing that's coming up, and you mentioned it, your transatlantic row. Tell us about Mark Crampton and why.
Sure. I am a coach at the SEALFIT, and I'm the only non-Navy SEAL coach. All the rest are Navy SEAL guys. And Mark Crampton, Master Chief, he was an E9, highest you can get in the Navy for enlisted. And he did 28 years active, and then he did 12 years retired. And when he was active, he ran Coronado. He ran scuba school at Buds and all that. He ran sniper school. Chris Kyle, he was his instructor. And he'd been around a long time. And we worked together for about 6 years. And he was solid. We all thought Mark was just super solid. And then a few days after one of our last crucibles, we're doing the 50-hour nonstop together. He and I are coaching these people in the 50 hours. He went home and blew his head off. And we all just looked at each other, all the instructors, all the people. We all just looked and said, how did we miss this? What did we not see over all these years? And the guy that founded SEALFIT is a guy named Commander Mark Devine. And Mark Devine said, he was my mentor. This guy mentored me when I was a young officer. He was this older enlisted guy, and he helped me grow up as an officer and was my mentor. And so I was so thrilled when he came to work for me. And then he goes and kills himself.
Do we know why?
No. And so
guesses to why, and maybe, what, because if you were friendly with him, you have conversations with some people, just don't confide in others and don't know what to do.
We would do the all-nighters together. So when you're doing 50 hours nonstop, it's 2.5 days. So he and I did the all-nighters. So we would talk 8-9 hours each of those nights, talking about kids or this kid or that kid or what's going on in Air Force or Navy or Army. And we talk about everything, grandkids, family. He never let on once that he had snakes in his head, that somewhere in a compartment, there was this thing that he was afraid of, or this would be a depressing thing for him. And so all we know is one day he just rode his mountain bike up to his favorite mountain bike place and went up to Sunset and shot himself in the head, laid on his bicycle. And so I have been involved in death, putting guys in body bags, or suicide veterans, for 30 years or so. It's not new. But this was so close to me, meaning what didn't I see that I said I needed to hop in and do more? And I want to go out the rest of my life helping people, serving kids, And so I said, I'm going to do this row across the Atlantic to try to bring some awareness to, we lose 18 to 20 veterans a day.
It's crazy. It's a crazy number.
That's twice the civilian rate of guys coming home, ladies coming home, and they don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal. And so they off themselves.
It's a huge problem. It has been for a while. And part of the problem is what they come home with, right? And part of the problem is there's just not enough support for them, right?
So here's the ironic thing. SEALFIT has a nonprofit that I'm rowing this boat for. It's called the Courage Foundation. And the Courage Foundation had a veteran suicide program. So we have this program where we raise all the money, we fly these guys in, we get them with a therapist, we put them up for 3 days in a hotel, 15, 20 at a time. And then we break them up into small groups. We call them boat crews. And they're with another veteran leading it. They process their stuff. And we were doing really well with vets prior to the pandemic. And then we went through our last $250,000, and the guys stopped showing, the people stopped giving. And now we have these vets again that the VA calls and says, hey, we have guys that, they really don't want to talk to us. They don't trust us, but they trust you. Can we send these guys over your way? We say, sure. Well, we're starting the fundraising all over again. And so we had something that was great. And Mark saw that, but he never engaged in it. And we never thought he needed to. He never showed symptoms that he needed to be in a small group processing the snakes that were in his head, which just goes to show that 18 to 20 a day, we in America can do better, including myself. And so I'm going to row this boat, and hopefully, as the people can see at the bottom of the screen, if they'd like to help me, help these vets, they can donate. They don't have to, but at least I want them to think about, you see Tunnels for Towers, the TV commercial with all these guys with their amputees, building the homes and stuff, which I watched today on TV. We got to do things. We don't have to, but we should choose to say, let us help you re-enter society and find normalcy and work on your stuff and raise your families, your kids, and be normal as best as you can. And I think
people don't realize that, like, there's so many good causes. I have a lot of them on the Wolff Den, and it's hard to get the visibility. But the importance of helping veterans is you can't ever have enough, because these are the people who are risking their lives so that we can live ours. And in a million years, I would never, unless you forced me, and even then, I would never do that. I would never put my life on the line for that. And the people who will do that for the people they don't even know, right? They don't know the people who they're fighting. They know their family, but they're not doing it for their family and their friends. They're doing it for the millions of people in the world. And to see veterans not get the help that they need. And I'm not saying it's a simple fix, but sometimes it's just a matter of attention, programming, money that's there, whatever that is. It's a cause that can never get too much attention, in my mind.
Yeah. I'm going to turn my camera here this way. Maybe it's better get a side shot. There's a movie out, and it came out a couple years ago. It's called Last Full Measure. The Last Full Measure. And the last full measure is what Abraham Lincoln said, Gettysburg Address, that the greatest gift that one man can give another man is his last full measure, meaning to die in the war. And it's with Samuel L. Jackson and Christopher Plummer. It's called Last Full Measure. And it's about a pararescueman who gets a Medal of Honor. But he goes in and he jumps into a bunch of Army guys who he's never met before in Nam. And he gets helicoptered down. He drops in and saves all these guys and doesn't know one of their names, and then finally gets killed. And all the guys that he rescued, he had never met before. He didn't know who they were. He just dropped in, did his job, saved a bunch, got a bunch helicoptered out, and then he's just working on another guy. He gets saved, or he gets shot. And so the concept of people laying down their lives for people that they don't know is a big concept. The last full measure of what Abraham Lincoln said is the guy's life, to give it away to save someone else. So freedom isn't free. America didn't get this way just because we're nice. There's all these men and women who have laid down their lives to give us this ideal that we have on election day today is being tested again. And democracy is messy. And yet it's an ideal that we believe is worth living for and dying for. And we wish that others would feel the same way.
Yeah, I think it's something that if there's one thing that people take for granted, that's it. That there's freedoms and all, but it's that other people are fighting our war for us, and the importance of fighting our war for others, like whatever's going on in the Ukraine, because that affects. It's all connected to the stuff that we don't even have to think about. People don't want to know about. They don't want to think about it. It's kind of like, A Few Good Men's my favorite movie of all time. And the one thing that Jessup said, Nicholson, is that, like, we don't think about it. We don't, no one thinks about this stuff that's going on. Now, he had some bad stuff that he did, and that's a whole nother story, but he had it right. Like, you just take for granted that there's people here who are just going to go and give their life for it. And, in a way, Mark gave his life, right? And we hope now that some good can come from it. And everyone knows someone who's been affected by suicide. They just do. It doesn't always hit as home like it did for you. I have someone who I knew, who I tried to help, who I knew was struggling, and tried to help, and never took my hand. But everyone knows someone. And even if you don't, someone who knows someone who knows. I mean, these are human beings.
That's right.
And that's all we are. We're all human beings just trying to figure it out. And the one thing that you said early on was, like, no one's ever talked to me that way when you talk to this guy. It's like, it takes as much effort to be nice and helpful as it does to be mean, and it just does.
Yeah, I try to make it a deal where I try to do something nice for somebody every day. I try to do a good deed every day that no one's going to know about or see. And then, like, paying for somebody's meal, that doesn't even know that you're paying for their meal, or just something. And then I try to be an encourager to somebody every day, because so many people over my life have been encouraging to me. So we all choose to be mean or gnarly or, asses or nice, or, kind. It's your choice every day. And anyway, it's nicer to live nice.
And some there are people who are born a certain way. There are people who had instances who have affected them. I mean, we look at some. Did you watch the Dahmer film?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a real interesting study, because we can't say he did what he did, because it certainly didn't. It certainly helped and didn't hurt. But if there was someone there, like, to help you in the way that you got help, because all the stuff that you did that had happened to you could have easily gone the other way.
Sure.
And you talk about the biggest thing helping you was that someone just believed in you and cared. There's so many people who don't have that in their life, even though it's right next to them. It could be right next to them. And that's what I think, the stuff that you're doing, the awareness, that's what I think needs to help, is to be like, ask someone, how are you doing? And not make it this pleasantry. Really, right. How are you doing? Because most people, when they ask the question, how are you doing? They don't care. It's just, how are you doing? I'm good. How you doing? I'm good. And then that's it. So when someone asks me how I'm doing, I tell them I'm tired. I tell them, you ask me a question, don't ask me something you don't want to hear the answer to. And I think if we're all honest with each other and really tell someone how we're doing, that might, lead to more conversation, which is what we need. That's what we need. More conversation. It's what we do is same here. Keep the conversation moving forward.
That's right. I say to people sometimes, you really want to know? How you doing? And then if I feel like I'm spunky or something, or they would understand, I say, do you really want to know? And they go, oh, no, I really don't want to know, because that's going to be a big conversation or something.
No, but that's important, because I've had someone ask me that, do you really want to go? Yes, that's why I asked you the question. I'm not going to ask you a question I don't want to hear the answer to.
I get it. I had 5 kids. I have 5 kids. and so every day was like, how are you doing? And I just shake my head, you know. The reason that I was probably the athlete that I was is that I used early morning athletics as my mental therapy to get going during the day. You know, there was only one part of my day that I could control, and that was the part early in the morning when I was out running or working out or doing something, processing my stuff for the day. And then as soon as I got home with the kids, you know, it was off to the races all day long: football, basketball, baseball, grades, music, blah blah blah. Anyway, so um, there's something about get your head squared away and then listen to others, and you know, to see if you can help.
So you got all. I mean, I want to talk about your accomplishments, and because it's just it's incredible stuff to.
You keep with accomplishments, golly.
Oh, I mean, I'm just saying, I have a brother who's an Ironman himself, and we'll talk about the same here endurance team that he does. But how are you mentally today as we sit?
You know, I'm mentally in the struggle, and the struggle is I was doing my I was doing my 13th Ironman, full Ironman, and I couldn't pedal against the wind. And I was having a real tough time that day saying, man, I just don't have any energy. Anyway, I didn't make the time cutoff. I made 12 Ironmans in a row, and then I couldn't make the 13th. And I went home and had a heart attack. When I had a heart attack, you know, the doc said, you know, you're only running on 3 of the 4 ventricles. I said, well, no wonder I couldn't push against the wind. And so I said, well, that sucks. Fix that thing, you know. So he stuck 3 stents in. And anyway, then 2 weeks later, I went out and ran a half marathon. I said, this engine runs fine. Just change the oil on this thing, you know, let's go. And so then I got COVID. And when I got COVID real bad. And in essence, I sort of cooked my lungs. I had 104 temperature for like 7 days in a row. And when I got done with COVID, when I finally came out on my 15th day, I wasn't dead like a lot, but I came where I couldn't breathe. And so I've struggled for the last 2.5 years to breathe, just to do something stupid like, is this emphysema? You know, what is wrong? Like you're gasping for air. So I tried to do Ironman Florida last year, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't breathe. And swimming was my strength of the 3 Ironmans, what you do, bike, run, swim. I was a swimmer. That's my deal. So I didn't do the Ironman. I had to drop out. So this year, I've been working all year long on, can I get these lungs healed? Recently, about 3 months ago, I went to my pulmonologist and I said, can you read my mail? I mean, are we making any progress? He did some tests on me, and he said, your lungs are 93% still infected. I said, how can my lungs be infected 2.5 years after I had COVID? He said,
Long COVID.
you're a long hauler, and you know, we don't know what the deal is with you. So he put me on prednisone, you know, which is a steroid, and it made me gain weight, which wasn't fun, become puffy, but then it did heal my lungs. So I got down to a 23% infection rate for my lungs. So I hopped back in the pool and said, can I breathe? So I just finished a half Ironman 3 weeks ago.
When did you do your first Ironman?
I'm one of the old guys. I'm one of the originals. So I did 1980 in Honolulu when there was 100 of us. And it was a dare of just bring your A game. And I brought a borrowed bicycle, a pair of swim trunks, a baseball cap, no toe clips, you know, on your bike. You just show up and let's see who's got it, the swimmer, the biker, or the runner, who's got the stuff. And there was 100 of us, and I finished 39th, and I was 27 years old, and it was the 3rd year. So the first year Ironman had 12 guys, second year had 15. Then Sports Illustrated did an article on it in May of 1979. I read that, and I said, hey, I can do that. I'm a pararescue, and I can swim, I can bike, I can run, you know, so let's go. Anyway, I did that. And then I came back and did Kona, the World Championships at the 25th anniversary, which is 2003, which is a long time ago that I did Kona. Anyway, so I've been doing Ironmans for a long time. There's 2 of us left. in the world that have done both Honolulu, year 1, 2, or 3, and then Kona. And he's in San Diego, and he's a real athlete. I mean, he just did Kona, I don't know, in October, and smoked it. I'm not a triathlete. I'm just a guy that can swim and bike and run one day a year.
What you need to do, though. My brother's done full Ironman. He started a same here endurance team to try and raise some money for mental health when he does. And he's had some health issues too, and pushed through. I have another friend who travels the world and does some Ironmans. Why is it so important? You've done 12 of them. Why is it so important to keep doing more Ironman? Because even just doing one is an incredible feat.
You know, I think all of us have personal challenges. I think all of us have things inside of us that say, I wonder if, as we mentioned before. And so I'm just trying to stay in the game. I want to stay physically fit as long as I can, which is great insurance for someone that has no medical history. Right. And so the doc said to me, you know, the best way for you to age is to stay healthy. It's your best health insurance.
Yeah.
And I have found that I like feeling healthy. I sleep better and eat better being healthy. Everything about exercising helps me in one capacity. I'm smarter. My brain, it's clearer. I think.
Right, but you don't have to do an Ironman to be healthy. You can do all that exercise without.
No, you're right. So I like the challenge of, I wonder if I can still do this kind of stuff. But that's why I picked up these other things that I did just to see if I could do them too. And then this row across the Atlantic was like a kicker, like, well, that's a trip, man. That's 40 to 50 days. I wonder if, you know, and they told me, hey, you're too old again. And that you're the only American.
That's a mental thing, right? Because you're talking about the sleep. The 3 hours is not a big deal. You rest, but not the sleep. And now you get tired. It's going to be a lot more mental than physical. Don't get me wrong. The physical stuff is still incredible, but mentally.
You know what it'll do? All that, I want to be tested. I want to test myself. But what it'll do is open up more doors for me to get into more high schools, more universities, more places where I can speak and encourage. And, you know, this row is, I'm almost up to $30,000. This thing has cost me $30,000. Mm. And my wife and I have a deal. The deal is, she says, you cannot spend any of our money on your stupid things. And I say, all right. She said, so if you can raise it, I guess you can do it, but you're not spending my money. You're not spending our retiree money. I said, okay, I got it. So this $30,000 I've raised by speaking. So I go out and I speak, and I take that and I tuck that thing away in a bucket. You know, I just keep filling up this bucket with funds for my next adventure. And so this will open up a door for me to get back out on circuit, talking to vets, going to hospitals and different places, and encouraging folks, which I wouldn't be able to do if I didn't do that. So it's sort of a ministry for me. It's kind of a brand and opening of doors for me. If I do this kind of stuff, they always say, come tell us why you're doing this kind of stuff. And I get to tell people and help them.
So you ran 7 marathons in 7 weeks on 7 continents.
No, sort of. I ran 7 marathons in 7 days.
7 days, that's what I meant.
7 days in a row on 7 continents. That's called the World Marathon Challenge.
How many people have done that?
Probably maybe 100.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was another one of those things. Like, I wonder if, because I'm not a runner, and so I mean, I run like you. I can run, but I'm not a runner.
I can't swim. My brother can run. I can't run. I can walk.
I make running look like work.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, I can run if I have to. So
is that the toughest thing you've ever had to do physically and mentally?
No.
It's not? What is?
The Navy SEAL 50-hour nonstop.
Yeah.
That 50-hour nonstop with those guys yelling in your head every 2 minutes that you're an effing loser and you're an effing embarrassment. Why don't you quit?
I feel like the 7 days would be tougher, but you're saying no.
It's a different kind of, again, this is a mental thing.
Yeah.
Of you're sleep deprived and you're doing CrossFit style games nonstop for 50 hours.
You're so mentally fit that, to me, I would think you'd laugh at these people saying this stuff to you.
No, No, I did it at 66 with all these kids. And
Yeah.
so these instructors told me not to show up. They said, hey, listen, don't do it, dude. I mean, you're old and we're going to crush you. And, let's just help you out. Don't show up.
But they already know if your end is doing something like this road, doing an Ironman, doing something that pushes you to, you're going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The 7 marathons, it's all mental. It's not physical, it's mental. There's one guy that did 7 marathons, 7 days, and he didn't train one day for it. How he did it, he was already an athlete, but he had the head game to know how to organize his mind for the pain that he was going to get into. And what I do is I break it up into mini goals. How do you eat the elephant one bite at a time?
Yeah.
And I have a choice of how fast I want to run that thing. And so I chose that I was going to run that thing between 5 and 6 hours. Wasn't going to break neck. There are a lot of people faster than me, but I knew I had another one coming in less than 24 hours. So why bust it? You're just going to have to do this thing again. So you organize your mind. And when I work with young people, I teach them about emotional stability or emotional maturity, meaning, can you control your mind? Self-mastery. Some people call it, some guys and ladies are into self-mastery. What that means is that you take control of the way you think. Like, a lot of folks don't think about their thinking.
Yeah.
They think. And they
How
think,
did you get this? Because we talk about all this, but how did you get to be so mentally tough to learn about the mental stuff?
because you play like you train. And so I trained in pain. I figured out what would be painful and what would be as difficult as the run, and therefore I made it more difficult. So what I did is I put on a weight vest, and I said, when I'm going to train, my last week of training, I'm going to run 5 20-mile days in a row with a weight vest on.
Yeah.
Meaning that when I take the weight vest off, I'm going to feel like I got turbo on my wings. And my head's going to say, if you did that other thing, you can surely do this.
Yeah, it's like swinging a bat with a donut on it.
That's right. Right. You swing that bat enough and never have, like when I swim, I usually put wrist weights, ankle weights on my wrists. And so I put a buoy between my legs so I don't use my lower body at all. And I put these weights on so that when I swim, it's an upper body workout. And I pull the water through with these weights, 2.5 pounds on each wrist, which people say, that's crazy. I've never seen anybody do that before. I say, well, you didn't train for pararescue. You didn't train in the old days when you had to find a way to get it together if you're going to make that thing. Anyway, so when I train heavier, when I get into the race, it's like bada bing, this pain, I can always slow down. But what I do is I get my mind squared away of this is going to be a 5 or 6 hour event. And I take it like the first 3 hours, I will not let myself stop. But at the end of 3 hours, I'll allow myself to walk. So I reward myself at the end of 3 hours and say, if you can do this small game, here's 1 hour, here's 2 hours, bada bing, why don't you have a drink and sit down for a moment or do whatever you want to do. I'm going to
20 to 25 mini races within a race.
You bet.
Just keep winning them all.
That's right. And then I make my mind into like a dresser drawer, with the socks on top and the t-shirts and all the stuff going down. Well, I pull out drawers in my mind where I say, I'm going to think on this topic now for the next hour. And I may create a speech. And in that hour, I'm going to work on a speech that I know I have to give. And then I'll shut that. And the second hour, I'll pull a different drawer out of my mind. I'll think on this. And I'll shut that. In the third hour, I pull out this drawer and I think on this. And I reward myself by breaking that 6 hours up into segments that the time goes by because I'm not thinking about my feet. I'm thinking about what's going on in my head. And my head keeps going and time just passes. So I move the pain out and I put something else in there. So like in 6 days, I worked 6 days on that one dresser drawer. I pulled the same dresser out at the 3 to 4 hour mark. And I thought about that. So at night, I'd write it all down. And I had a bunch of stuff done in my head by the end of the 7 days. I just worked on something in each of those blocks versus suffering through this thing in the cold and the heat and whatever.
And so you have to learn on becoming emotionally mature, mentally mature, because your mind will want to go all over the place. And like I said with those kids, when I said, for $1,000,000, oh yeah, you bet. Well, I have that side of me too, which is, you want to quit, Owens? You can quit. Anybody can quit. Or do you want to push through and figure this thing out?
And this is great lessons for anything. It doesn't have to be an Ironman. It doesn't have to be a marathon. Anything. It could be in your home life, in your relationships, right?
Correct.
Sports, and business, all of that.
All that. So I work with people when I was a corporate business consultant doing management, leadership, stuff. I would talk to people about the way they think, and they go, "Oh, you're just a positive thinking guy." No, 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 no. I don't want the snakes in my head. I want to be the best version of me I can be. And I want to be able to be sensitive to those around me as well, versus being arrogant, just be focused on me as a narcissist. And so you begin to train your mind, and you learn to talk less, and you learn to breathe. And breathing is a huge component of maturity.
Yeah, it's great for your mental health too. Same here, has some great breathing exercises you can find on the website.
Yep. And so I do box breathing every day, and I do deep nasal breathing. We train our students to try to live on 6 breaths a minute. You only allow yourself 6 breaths a minute. Why? Because you're thinking about mental control, which means you have to think on the thoughts that you want to think about versus the negative dialogue that's running through your head all day long. So every one of us have a playlist that's running in our head, or we have a dialogue that's going in our head. And those thoughts are not ours. Those thoughts are thoughts that are trying to come in and become ours and take root in us.
Yeah, I think
Right.
thoughts all the time. Yeah.
And so we try to work with people to get it together. When people say, "You made me do that," no one made you to do squat. That's the way you chose to behave, or that's how you chose to respond. You're just emotionally immature.
Yeah, this actually brings it to a great thing. One of the things I took away, many things from hearing you talk and talking to you. Again, a lot of inspirational stuff. 3 reasons people change, and I wrote it down, but I want you to talk about it.
Good. You want me to talk about it here?
Yeah, you talk about because I want people to hear it.
Well, there's a leadership principle. And if everybody's out there, would you get your pen or pencil, get your phone out and do this like Matt did? People change. And you think about this when you're raising your kids, when you're raising them, hiring employees, when you're working with your next door neighbor, whoever it is, people change only when 3 things. Ready? When they hurt enough that they have to, jail or divorce or whatever. 2, when they learn enough that they want to. The light comes on. Oh, I never knew that. Nobody ever told me that. Didn't know how to make money. Didn't know how to not get angry. Didn't know how to this and that. When I learn enough that now I want to. And thirdly, when I've received enough mentoring, coaching, that I'm able to. People change only when they hurt enough that they have to, learn enough that they want to, receive enough that they're able to. And so if you have that in your brain when you're talking to people, especially like you're interviewing somebody, well, how have you learned in life? You don't want to be spending a bunch of money on a person who only learns because of pain. Oh, that car wreck got me to stop drinking. Or, the 4th divorce, it finally got me thinking. Or, when I got to 500 pounds, I guess my heart didn't work real good.
I think that's what we do. And especially with tragedy too. We wait till something tragic happens before we start to do it. I know I'm guilty of that. And then you have that moments where like, life is short, we're going to do this. And then you kind of get back in that lull again. And then something else happens. And I mean, that's how society is, especially with the guns, like in gun violence, but there's other things as well.
That's right. So for the listener out there, if they would look at themselves or look at their kids or look at their wife or look at their whoever and say, they only learn 3 ways: by hurt, by revelation, or by coaching. What are you going to do then?
Yeah.
And how are you going to work and work that through? And so let me close this thing sort of by saying, if you want to get far in life, humility works. Learning to ask questions, learning to ask for help, learning to be strong enough to say, I have an issue and I need to work on it. Meaning, either you deal with your issues or your issues deal with you. And so it's important that if you're out there, if you want to grow, the best way is to ask for help and walk in humility. And if you do that, people won't think worse of you. They'll think maybe you're inquisitive, or maybe you're smart, or maybe you're perceiving something. And if you do it on a constant basis, not because you're weak and you can't get your job done, but I mean, like, I'd like to learn this. I'd like to grow. I'd like to expand. People will then think, this kid or this person's teachable, and they want to grow. And I wonder how much they can grow. And people want to help you.
People want to help. That's what people want to help. People you've never met want to help. I mean, if someone came to me who I never met and I see this stuff and they're struggling, I want to help them, because I know that when I was in my struggles that I asked for people to help, and there's people around me who want to help, and there's people that, I barely knew they want to help, and people I didn't know who want to help. And so that's such an important lesson, to be able to ask for help, not where you're always asking for things, but when you're asking for help. I mean, think about how many lives could have been prevented if people just asked for help. And then also the second most important thing besides asking for help is actually being able to receive the help, right? Being open to help that people want to give to you.
You bet. Yeah. Just a quick story on that is I went to university 5 times. I was sort of out of control for the first part of my life. And so I got D's and C's, I got D's and C's in junior high, and D's and C's in high school, and went to school, and got D's and C's. Went to the military, got my act together, grew up, came back, went back to college, and got straight A's. What a big deal, I just applied myself. But the point was that when I went back to college the 5th time, I went to these straight A nerdy kids, really smart, never got a B in their life, make it look easy. And I went to them and I said, "Are you really that much smarter than me?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Well, how come I struggle and you just make it look like you hardly ever study and you get straight A's?"
Yeah.
And they said to me, "This is how you study. You want to study with us?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Sit on the front row in every class. Don't sit in the back, front row. Position yourself to learn. Second of all, take a recorder with you and record the whole class. And then take your notes. And then meet with us afterwards. And we're going to put the recorder back on. And we're going to fill in everything that we didn't write down. And so we're going to hear it all twice that day." Anyway, I did exactly what they said. And all of a sudden, I got these A's. And they said, "It wasn't you're stupid. You don't know what you're doing." Yeah. You just didn't know.
People aren't taught. They just say, no one's going to tell you if you want to sit in the back, you want to sit in the back. If you want to study this way, study that way. You don't get taught that.
It was just a great lesson. Like, dude, there's a way to do this. And if you want to learn, ask somebody who knows how to do it, make money or a marriage or kids or whatever your issue is. Go ask someone who's doing it and you can learn.
Yeah. Who and what inspires you? Because I say, the stuff that people are going to hear, that it's inspirational, I think, on many levels. But what inspires you? Who inspires you?
Gosh, I think when I see all these disabled people, veterans, non-veterans, doing the things that they're doing, it just makes me think how blessed I am, how fortunate I am. And if they can do this stuff, what the hell? What's your issue? And so I'm always inspired when I'm seeing people take on challenges and fight. And not what happens to us, it's what happens in us, that makes the difference. All of us have crap in our life. All of us have stuff, but it all depends how you respond to it. And again, you heard me probably on the other podcast when I said, losers hang with losers and winners hang with winners, and excuse-minded people find other excuse-minded people to give them excuses.
Enable them.
Enable.
Do you know John O'Leary?
Excuse me?
You know John O'Leary, the Live Inspired podcast?
Uh-uh.
I'm going to introduce you to him. I think it'd be great to know. You also were the first guest on the Tom Brady podcast. How did that come to be, and what was that like?
Actually, I was number 14. Lindsey Vonn on one side, and I forgot who the Olympian was on the other side. That happened because what I'm told, Brady, he wants to go to 50. And so someone told them, his group, about me, and they called me and said, what is it that you know that we don't know? You're an old guy. Tom's only 44 at the time. You're 70. So what are the hints from 44 to 70? And I said, oh, I remember being 44, running iron stuff, And so I just gave him some hints on, well, if Tom wants to stay in the game till he's 70, a lot of guys talk the good game, but very few are still here, A, B, C, and D. And
He's
so
struggling this year. I think it's something to do with the team around him, but do you think it might be mental, some of it?
Oh, I think there's nothing worse than a divorce. And there's nothing more draining than trying to separate professional from personal and keeping your head in the game professionally when you got kids and stuff, going on and people saying things. It's just really hard.
I feel like he's been dealing that for years. I don't think that's a new thing. I don't know for sure. I think it might not be a new thing, but I guess it manifests and it builds, right?
Did you see him Monday night? Did you see the last
I didn't
drive?
watch any.
Oh my God. He looked on that last drive against the Rams. He had the kind of anger, the kind of this, I can't believe I'm in this situation. And when you see it on TV and
Yeah,
he
watch
took
it.
those guys, you can see there's a culmination of lots of stuff going on in his life. It was like, whoa, he's intense.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sure he has lots of stuff going on. The interesting part is that at the end of that interview, they said, why don't you come down to Tampa? And, we have an assessment center, the Tom Brady Assessment Center.
Oh.
I said, I got to speak down in Florida. They said, well, come by. So I go to the Tom Brady Assessment Center.
That's awesome.
I walk in there, and they go, hey, Mr. Owens, did you bring a book? I said, yeah, I brought my book, good, well, let's go assess you. You're old. And so I go in the back and the guy starts bending me and stretching me and pushing me and this and measuring me and all this stuff, And he said, the first thing I want to tell you is, that Tom got rid of all weights. He doesn't do any weight at all anymore. I said, no, what's he doing? He goes, I do bands, or he does bands. Everything is better with bands on your joints. I said, well, that's interesting. So he said, we're going to take you through all the things you normally do, but we're going to do it by bands. And it was really interesting. Anyway, I got through this 2.5 day assessment of them just working me out and checking me out and writing down, well, he's 70, this and this, everything, And they said, stay in contact. And they said, why don't you just move to Tampa and hang with us? I go, I don't want to go to Tampa. I'm here in Southern California,
Paradise.
Blah, blah, blah. They go, no, you could come to Tampa and hang. And I went, thanks. I'll just come down occasionally, say hi. Anyway, so it's been a fun thing to be following Tom and to know at 45 now he's doing what he's doing. And it changed my mindset because I go from 70 to 80 on how I want to become stronger and more elastic, more pliable, like he talks about. And I'm applying some of the Tom stuff, and every once in a while I'll send him a text message. Hey, I'm doing your stuff,
Like mountain climbing, Everest, and that's such a mental game. Do you ever think about doing something like that?
When I was in Pararescue, I had to take bodies off of Mount McKinley for Mount Alyeska. And so I was paid to be a mountain climber, rappelling and snowshoeing and ice climbing. And I, with 2 other guys, made a stupid deal. We tried to do a winter ascent of Mount McKinley or Mount Alyeska because no one had ever done it. Of course, when you're 24, you think, well, okay, let's go do it. So we climbed that sucker in January. They dropped us off, on a little 182 at about 10,000 feet on the Kilda Glacier. And they said, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And we didn't have a radio or anything. I mean, we could have died. They would never found us, Anyway, so we made this trek up on snowshoes till about 10,000 feet. Then we got onto crampons and we got to 14,000. And it's a place called Windy Corner. And Windy Corner is Windy Corner because it's really windy. It's about 30 below without any wind. And this thing was blowing 60 to 80 mile an hour gales. And we're up there just freezing, thinking this is really stupid. It's taken us 8 months or 8 days to get up just this far on crampons and snowshoes. There's a reason why nobody's ever done this stupid thing. And we made it down in 2. But so when people say, "Do you want to go mountain climbing?" I said, "I've lived in more ice caves than you could shake a stick at." And I'm really,
You got paid to do it and you didn't enjoy it, so you're certainly not going to do it for free.
you know, when you're in your 20s, it's a lot of fun. If you want to go knock yourself out on Everest, go have a great time. You know, I remember climbing. Matter of fact, I just tried to do a climb. These guys invited me to come speak and go to Grand Tetons and do the Grand. If you don't know this, but the Grand is the highest mountain of the Grand Tetons. I just did it a couple weeks ago. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Mark Crampton Memorial Transatlantic Row. Check out Rob Rose. It's
the number 4.
Yeah, Rob Rose for vets.org if you want to donate and find more information. RobertHamiltonOwens.com for just more information on Robert and his story. A lot more that he's done that we didn't even get to talk to today. Looking forward to following you on your journey and then also hearing about it afterwards. We're going to let you out of the Wolff Den with the same question everybody gets. You can.
But before you ask that last question, let me do this. I would like all the listeners to do me a favor, and that is, I want you to write Matt Wolff and tell him what you got out of this podcast. Tell him, like, he took away the 3 things: hurt, perceive, blah, blah, blah. He wrote that down last time I spoke. Well, I want to know what you're receiving out of this, and I want Matt to find out what you're getting out of it. So will you all do me a favor and write Matt something? Email. How do they get a hold of you, Matt?
Yeah, email, LinkedIn, any Facebook, everywhere. I'm the most accessible person in the world.
I want you guys to give comments on what you got out of this. And if Owens was a jerk or he was a nice guy, you can tell him that too. But tell him what you get out of this, and then we'll talk about it again sometime. Go ahead.
Yeah, we will encourage people to do that. Who knows? To get people to do stuff these days, it's like pulling teeth. But we will ask them and hopefully get some feedback for you, because I know it was important to you before we got on the call. And I just think people listen, and that's like, I don't have any agenda for it. I say let people listen and interpret and get out of stuff what they want to, and it could be inspiration, it could be educational, whatever it is. I think, and it should be different for everyone.
I would like them to be kind and to give you feedback.
I would like that too. So we're going to ask for it, and I appreciate you asking for it, and we'll let you know what they say.
Last question.
24 hours you can spend with anybody in the world. They have to be alive. You can't be related to them. Who would you choose? It's someone you haven't met yet. Who would you choose, and what would you guys like to do?
I'd spend time with Brady.
Yeah.
And
he was not there.
He wasn't there, no. His CEO did the interview. He said, we're going to give all this information to Tom. But I'd love to hang with Tom and talk to him about some of this stuff.
I mean, have you asked?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. What do they say?
It's impossible.
It won't be. When he retires, you're going to get some time. If not, we'll make it happen here somehow we'll get Tom on the Wolff Den. And if you get big enough, famous enough, have enough money, all this stuff is achievable if you put it in your mind, right? If you're mentally tough and figure out. We ask everyone to be on. That's a great choice. I don't know if he's ever been chosen before. Obviously, you'd like to talk to him. What sort of physical activity would you like to do with Tom?
Oh, I'd probably like to sit around and have a cup of coffee. That'd be a great activity. I just think if you got Goggins and you got Brady and you get this guy Mark Devine who runs SEALFIT, you get some of these thought leaders about aging and about physical fitness and mind control. I think that you could fill up an auditorium with 1,000 guys at $100 a thing, and they'd come from all over the country to hear these experts talk about their mind as well as their bodies. And
I think 10,000 people.
Yeah, I think anybody from 40 on up would just want to hear how. Like, I have guys every day say, "What's the answer?" Like yesterday, some guy said to me, "What's the answer to aging, Robert? You're the man." And I go, "Really not the man, but eat clean, watch your weight, an hour a day minimum, change the oil and rotate the tires on your body. Just keep it in the game." And I just would love to hear how others think on those same topics for all of us men and ladies who are trying to age wonderfully. as best you can. That's what I would love to have a conversation on.
I think the majority of people who are coaching, speaking, they haven't done the stuff the way that you have done. So, and other people who have been through things and done things and talk about it, different than someone who is just talking about this stuff.
I think it would be fun to have a guy who's an expert in his 40s, like Tom's 45, a guy who's an expert in his 50s, a guy who's expert in his 60s.
Right, but that's what I mean, an expert who's done it, not an expert who just talks about it.
No. Someone who's done this stuff. Everybody in the nation knows this guy's done this stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to do in the 70 bracket and sit down and what did we learn and then pass all that back down to folks.
Well, let's make it happen. It's got to find a way to make it happen. People know people, and as you get more notoriety and visibility, we'll make it happen.
Well, that's one thing you can do. If any of you listening need a speaker, I need to pay for the next couple adventures. So if you have me come speak, so I don't have to get in a beef with my wife about spending our money, that'd be a great thing. I love to speak, love to encourage, love to help, and I'm going to have to find some way to pay for the next one.
Robert HamiltonOwens.com, best way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, they all write me. Or here's my phone number. My phone number is 949-542-9600. 949-542-9600. I get phone calls every day from Australia and Austria. Hey, Robert, what do you think about this one? And we have this conversation. So just like with you, you asked, so I came.
When does the roast start? I forgot to even mention.
December 4th.
December 4th.
Yeah. And I will be posting on my website. I'll be posting how they can follow me every day.
I follow my brother when he does Ironman. It's a really fun and interesting. And I would send him text messages. Everyone you send him as he's not on his phone, but when he gets back, or it's almost like they can feel that their people are cheering him on and following him on. It's probably a great feeling when you finish and you go look back and
all
that. So I encourage you.
I got some this last time. Hey, we're glad you made it out of the water.
I appreciate the time.
All right. You're doing a good job. Keep it up.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. We got some great guests the rest of the week. So tune in, have a great night, and do a good deed, like Robert says.
Have fun, everybody.